4 years ago, my life was turned upside down. At 24 years old, I lost my mom to breast cancer. It wasn't the first time cancer had claimed someone in my family. Both of my grandmothers had also died from breast cancer. With such a heavy family history, I knew I needed to take control of my health. I visited a specialist for a screening, and the results hit me hard. I had cells in one of my breasts that could become cancerous at any time. My options weren't easy. I could either have regular screenings every few months and live in constant fear, knowing the cells could turn cancerous at any moment, or I could go for surgery. The doctor presented 3 possibilities: a single mastectomy, which would still require regular monitoring of the other breast, a bilateral mastectomy to remove all the breast tissue, eliminating the risk but leaving my body permanently altered, or just ongoing monitoring without intervention. After seeing cancer ravage my mother and grandmothers, I didn't want to take any chances. I opted for the bilateral mastectomy, the most drastic option. The surgery was supposed to leave me with only minor scarring, but that wasn't my reality. Instead, I was left with 2 large, pink, jagged scars on my chest, scars that completely shattered my confidence. The emotional aftermath of the surgery was brutal. I became deeply depressed. I couldn't stand to look at myself in the mirror, and I even threw away most of the mirrors in my apartment. The sight of my body made me physically ill, and I began to isolate myself, hardly leaving my flat. I eventually sought help from a therapist. The therapist suggested I see a plastic surgeon, not something they typically do, but my emotional distress was so profound that they thought it might help. The surgeon offered 3 options: a scar-reducing cream, laser treatments, or implants. The cream did nothing, and the laser treatment was too expensive and risky, so I decided to go with the implants. My natural size was an F cup, but I opted for a slightly smaller size, going down to a DD. After the implants, I finally started to feel like myself again. The scars were hidden, and I felt more confident. I wasn't aiming for perfection, just the ability to look in the mirror without feeling disgusted. Fast forward to the present. I'm now 28 and working in an office. I'm much better than I was, mentally and physically, but one coworker, Jill, seemed to have it out for me. She overheard a conversation between me and an old friend who knew about my surgery, where my friend jokingly mentioned how I'd be fine flying with implants. That one comment gave Jill enough information to start spreading rumors about me, telling the whole office that I'd had a boob job without any context. By the end of the day, everyone knew about my surgery, but no one knew why I'd had it. For the next few months, Jill made it her mission to humiliate me. She'd make snide comments and jokes about my appearance within earshot. She once referred to me as having more plastic than Barbie and called me fake in 2 ways. The worst came when she called me a sack of silicone, which I didn't hear personally, but one of my coworkers told me about it. Her comments weren't daily, but I heard at least 3 snide remarks a week for months. The breaking point came during a lunch break with a few coworkers. I mentioned something about someone being shallow, and Jill, with a smirk, gestured toward my chest and said, "You'd know all about being shallow." That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. I snapped. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Do you know why I have these? 4 years ago, I had potentially cancerous cells in my breast tissue. The doctors recommended a mastectomy, and I was left with huge scars. I went to therapy because I couldn't look at myself without crying. My therapist suggested seeing a cosmetic surgeon to help hide the scars. I got implants, not to be shallow, but to feel human again. So, next time you want to judge someone for having surgery, maybe you should ask why they had it first." I left the table, feeling like I delivered the perfect mic drop moment. After that, the office was divided. A third of my coworkers came up to me to offer support, while others said Jill was just joking and that I had overreacted. I stood by what I said. Jill had been the real problem long before I snapped. Later that day, I received an email from HR asking to meet the following day regarding a hostile work environment. When I called for clarification, it was clear Jill had filed a complaint against me. The person who had signed off on the email was Debbie, Jill's friend in HR. So I knew this was going to be a tough situation. I realized that if Jill had already gone to HR, I needed to protect myself. I started gathering evidence. I remembered that my contract allowed me to request an impartial reviewer if I felt the person handling the complaint was biased. I photocopied that part of the contract, highlighting it for reference. Next, I reached out to the coworkers who had shown their support. I asked them to write statements about Jill's comments, and to my surprise, 20 people agreed to help, though not all were able to follow through. By the next morning, I had 16 signed letters in hand. Most were brief, but detailed enough to prove that Jill had been making inappropriate comments about me for months. Some even included additional instances where Jill had insulted others in the office. From anti-Semitic comments about a coworker's nose to jabs about another colleague's weight. When I walked into HR, Debbie was there to meet me. I immediately requested that another HR representative oversee the meeting, citing my contract's clause. Debbie tried to argue, but when I presented the highlighted section of my contract, she had no choice but to bring in a supervisor. The meeting itself felt like an interrogation, with HR asking why I thought Jill had an issue with me and why I hadn't reported her sooner. I explained everything, from the cancer scare to the surgery to the months of harassment. I handed over the 16 signed statements and provided the names of the coworkers who had witnessed the lunchroom incident. I knew HR had cameras in the lunchroom, so they could verify my version of events. After the meeting, I returned to my desk, half expecting to be fired. But within an hour, HR started calling in everyone who had written letters. Each person was gone for about 10 minutes before returning. Then, Jill was called in. She came back visibly fuming, but didn't say a word. At around 4:30, Jill was called into HR one last time. She came back a short while later, packed up her desk, and left the office in a rage. Later, I received an email from HR. My case was closed, and Jill was no longer employed. In the end, Jill's attempts to get me fired had backfired spectacularly. What started as an effort to humiliate me ended with her losing her job, all because I stood up for myself and refused to be bullied. It was the ultimate victory, proving that sometimes standing up for what's right truly pays off.